Imagine you're floating in the Antarctic Ocean and you make the mistake of looking down. You'd expect some small fish, clouds of plankton, nothing too crazy. But what you actually see is terrifying. Spiders with leg spans longer than your arm crawling across the seafloor. Jellyfish with tentacles stretching farther than blue whales. Fish that should fit in your hand now the size of small cars. And yes, these are all real. The freezing waters of Antarctica have pushed evolution into overdrive, creating a world of giants. Welcome to polar gigantism. So why is this even happening? You'd think that in a place where the water is freezing and food is scarce, animals would evolve to be smaller, not bigger. Smaller bodies need less energy, less food, less oxygen. It just makes sense, right? But the Antarctic Ocean does the complete opposite. And to understand why, we need to look at the most extreme example, the colossal squid. Now, most people assume the colossal squid is just another case of deep-sea gigantism, like the giant squid. But that's not quite right. Colossal squids live almost exclusively in the waters surrounding Antarctica, swimming in temperatures close to or even below C. Because of the salt content, the water doesn't freeze at exactly 0, but we're still talking about insanely cold conditions. And this cold is what made them giants. Here's the thing. Colossal squids are actually part of the glass squid family, a group named after their transparent, see-through bodies. Glass squids in warmer waters are exactly what they sound like, nearly invisible, with bodies you can see straight through. So, why doesn't the colossal squid look anything like glass? Because polar gigantism changed everything. In water this cold, being transparent isn't useful anymore. There's barely any light to hide from in the first place. The colossal squid traded its see-through body for thick, insulated flesh that helps it survive in near-freezing temperatures. But it didn't give up stealth entirely. Their bodies are covered in deep red skin, which absorbs any light from bioluminescent prey instead of reflecting it. In the pitch-black depths of the Antarctic Ocean, red appears completely black. You'll never see them coming. And when you're this massive, weighing over half a ton, you don't really have predators except for the occasional sperm whale. Sperm whales dive deep enough and are strong enough to hunt colossal squids. They've been found with scars from squid suckers on their skin, circular marks the size of dinner plates. But aside from sperm whales, the colossal squid has no natural enemies, so your body isn't designed to run away. It's designed to hunt. Colossal squids have the largest eyes of any animal on Earth. Each eye is about the size of a basketball, roughly 11 inches in diameter. These massive eyes can detect the faintest traces of light in the deep ocean. They also have rotating hooks on their tentacles that can swivel and grip prey in ways that regular squid suckers can't. But that still doesn't answer the core question. Why are they so huge in the first place? The answer isn't in what they eat. It's in the water itself. Cold water holds way more dissolved oxygen than warm water does. This is basic chemistry. As water temperature drops, more oxygen molecules can dissolve and remain suspended in the liquid. At tropical temperatures around 25 degrees C, seawater holds about 6 milligrams of oxygen per liter. But drop that temperature to 0 degrees, and the oxygen concentration nearly doubles to around 11 milligrams per liter. That's almost twice as much oxygen available for every breath an animal takes. And here's why that matters. For basically every animal, the larger your body, the more oxygen your cells need to survive. Bigger bodies mean more cells. More cells mean more cellular respiration. More respiration means more oxygen demand. In warm tropical waters, there simply isn't enough oxygen dissolved in the water to support truly giant creatures. The oxygen limitation keeps sizes in check. An animal can only grow as large as the available oxygen allows. But in Antarctic waters at near freezing temperatures, oxygen is abundant. There's no ceiling, no biological limiter holding growth back. Over millions of years, this abundance of oxygen pushed glass squids to grow larger and larger. The bigger they got, the better they became at storing heat and energy in the cold environment. Evolution didn't just allow them to grow, it forced them to. Get bigger or die. And as they grew, they left behind their transparent glass-like appearance entirely, becoming the armored, red-skinned giants we see today. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Giant squids, the other massive squid species, don't live in polar waters. They live in temperate and deep ocean zones worldwide. So, how did they get so big? This is where deep-sea gigantism plays a role. Giant squids evolved large because of the pressures and conditions of the deep ocean. But colossal squids, they hit the evolutionary jackpot. They live in deep, cold Antarctic waters. That means they experience both deep-sea gigantism and polar gigantism at the same time. It's a double dose of size-boosting environmental pressure, and that's likely why colossal squids are the largest invertebrates on Earth. While giant squids are longer, colossal squids are far heavier, weighing over 1,000 pounds. That's more than double the weight of a giant squid. But the colossal squid is just one example. If polar gigantism is real, we should see it everywhere in the Antarctic, and we do. Let's talk about sea spiders. Take a normal sea spider from a tropical coral reef. These guys aren't technically true spiders, they're pycnogonids. But the name stuck. A typical sea spider in warm water is about 1 to 2 centimeters across, about the size of a quarter. Pretty small, pretty harmless. Now, find that same species in the Antarctic Ocean. It looks like this. Over 2 feet across, legs longer than rulers, each leg spanning 10 to 12 inches or more. The exact same family of animal, just supersized beyond recognition. If you saw one of these crawling toward you on the seafloor, you'd think you were looking at something from another planet. And in a way, you are. The Antarctic might as well be an alien world. So, what happened here? The same rules that turned glass squids into colossal giants forced these spiders to grow. Cold water means more oxygen, and sea spiders breathe through their legs. You can already see how insanely long they are. That means they're pulling in massive amounts of oxygen with every movement. Their entire body plan is optimized for an oxygen-rich environment. The longer the legs, the more surface area for gas exchange, the bigger they can grow. It's a feedback loop. More oxygen allows longer legs. Longer legs allow more oxygen intake. More oxygen intake allows even larger body size. But what do they actually do with all that size? Unlike crabs or lobsters, giant sea spiders aren't brawlers. They don't have claws or crushing appendages, but they are predators, and patient ones. They creep across the seafloor on those stilt-like legs, moving slowly and deliberately, stepping carefully over sponges, corals, and their favorite prey, starfish. When they find a target, they use a long feeding tube called a proboscis, almost like a biological straw, to pierce through the starfish's tough skin and suck out its insides. The entire process can take hours. It's slow, it's methodical, it's brutal, and yes, it's disgusting, but it works. But here's the twist. The starfish they're eating, also gigantic, because of course they are. This is the Antarctic. You're probably thinking, that barely looks like a starfish. I get it, but it is. Antarctic starfish don't just grow larger. They evolve more arms, a lot more. While most starfish have the classic 5-pointed star shape, Antarctic starfish can have 10, 20, even over 50 arms radiating from their central body. Evolution didn't just make them bigger. It went absolutely wild with the design. Some species look more like alien flowers than animals. Others resemble living snowflakes with arms branching out in intricate, symmetrical patterns. And these starfish aren't passive filter feeders sitting on the ocean floor waiting for food to drift by. They're aggressive predators. Most starfish in warm waters prey on clams and mussels, slowly prying open the shells with their tube feet and everting their stomachs inside to digest the soft tissue. It's weird, but it works. But Antarctic starfish? They take it to another level. They eat other starfish. It's cannibalism on a massive scale. They'll climb on top of another starfish, wrap their numerous arms around it, and slowly digest it alive. It's a brutal arms race, literally. The starfish with the most arms usually wins because it has more gripping power, more leverage, and more surface area to overpower its prey. Antarctic starfish also live dramatically longer than their warm water cousins. While a tropical starfish might live 5 years, Antarctic starfish regularly survive for over 40 years. That slow metabolism and cold environment let them grow for decades, adding arm after arm, getting larger and larger with each passing year. So we've got giant squids, giant spiders, giant starfish. But polar gigantism doesn't stop there. It created the longest animal on Earth. Meet the lion's mane jellyfish. When we say longest, we mean it. This isn't an exaggeration. Compare the length of a lion's mane jellyfish to a blue whale, the largest animal by mass on the entire planet. The jellyfish is longer. Its tentacles can stretch over 120 feet. Some specimens recorded at nearly 130 feet from bell to tentacle tip. That's longer than most buildings are tall. A single jellyfish with tentacles that could wrap around a basketball court and still have length to spare. Imagine swimming in the ocean and brushing against something. You look down and realize it's a tentacle. You follow it with your eyes, and it just keeps going, and going, and going. That's the lion's mane. Now compare that to a jellyfish from the same family that lives in warm water, like the blue jellyfish found in tropical oceans. The difference is staggering. Blue jellyfish are maybe 2 to 3 feet across at most, with relatively short tentacles. Lion's mane jellyfish dwarf them in every dimension. The bell alone can be over 6 feet wide. And the reason is simple. Blue jellyfish live in warm, oxygen-poor water. They never experience the evolutionary pressure to grow. Lion's mane jellyfish, living in the cold, oxygen-rich waters of the Arctic and subantarctic regions, had no such limits. They just kept growing. The pattern is clear: cold water, high oxygen, gigantism. But you're probably wondering, if oxygen is the answer, why doesn't every single animal in the Antarctic become a giant? And that's a great question, because the answer gets complicated. Here's where we need to talk about the rules. Polar gigantism only works for cold-blooded animals, specifically animals that let the environment control their body temperature and that get their oxygen directly from the water. For them, colder water means more oxygen, slower metabolism, and zero energy wasted on generating internal heat. It's the perfect environment for growth. But what about warm-blooded animals? Polar bears are massive, way bigger than other bear species. Emperor penguins are enormous compared to tropical birds. Aren't they examples of polar gigantism? Not exactly. Polar bears and penguins get bigger in cold climates, but for a completely different reason. This has to do with something called Bergmann's rule. Bergmann's rule states that warm-blooded animals in colder climates tend to evolve larger body sizes, but not because of oxygen. It's because larger bodies lose heat more slowly. This is all about surface area to volume ratio. A bigger body has proportionally less surface area relative to its mass, which means less heat escapes through the skin. Think of it like this. An ice cube melts faster than a giant block of ice, even though they're made of the same material. The block has less surface area per unit of volume, so it loses heat slower. The same principle applies to animals. That's why polar bears are the largest bear species, weighing up to 1,500 pounds compared to a grizzly's 800 pounds. It's why emperor penguins are the largest penguin species, standing nearly 4 feet tall and weighing up to 90 pounds. While tropical penguin species like the Galapagos penguin barely reach 5 pounds. The extra mass helps them retain warmth in freezing environments. It's like having built-in insulation. Every extra pound of body fat and muscle is another layer of protection against the cold. But there's a hard limit. Being warm-blooded means you're constantly burning calories to maintain body temperature. The bigger you get, the more food you need. And in the polar regions, food is scarce. You can't just keep growing indefinitely because you'll starve. This is why we don't see polar bears the size of elephants or penguins the size of ostriches. Bergmann's rule gives you size for warmth, but it can never push you to the extremes that polar gigantism creates in cold-blooded animals. Warm-blooded animals hit a metabolic wall. Cold-blooded animals don't. So, polar gigantism is exclusively a cold-blooded phenomenon, which means fish, invertebrates, and anything that breathes through gills or skin. And when you look at those groups in the Antarctic, the gigantism is everywhere. Even plankton gets supersized. Antarctic copepods, which are basically the polar version of plankton, are nearly 10 times heavier than their tropical cousins. Most copepods are so small, you can barely see them without a microscope, usually less than a millimeter long. But Antarctic copepods can reach up to a centimeter in length. That's big enough to see with the naked eye as they swim through the water. To us, that's not monstrous. But in the world of plankton, these things are absolute giants. But here's where it gets really weird. Not everything in the Antarctic got bigger. A small number of species actually got smaller. This is called polar dwarfism, and it's the exact opposite of what we've been talking about. Certain Antarctic fish species, like some ice fish and snailfish, are noticeably smaller than their relatives in warmer waters. Why? Because in these extreme environments, food isn't always available year-round. For some species, evolving a smaller body meant they could reach adulthood faster, reproduce earlier, and survive longer periods without food. When food is only abundant for a few months out of the year, staying small can be the difference between life and death. It's not as dramatic as turning into a giant sea monster, but it's a valid evolutionary strategy. Polar dwarfism proves that the Antarctic doesn't have a one-size-fits-all rule. Evolution adapts to the specific pressures each species faces. For most, that means gigantism. For a few, it means the opposite. But there's another strange side effect of the cold that most people don't realize. It doesn't just change what evolves, it changes how fast evolution happens. In the Antarctic, everything runs in slow motion. Chemical reactions slow down, metabolism slows down, reproduction slows down. A single generation of some Antarctic species can take decades. Even the starfish we talked about earlier, living for 40+ years, are reproducing far less frequently than their tropical relatives. This means evolution itself takes longer, much longer. Many Antarctic species are essentially living fossils, almost identical to their ancestors from tens of millions of years ago. Some sea spider lineages, urchin species, and deep Antarctic fish have barely changed since before humans even existed. The environment has been so stable for so long that there's been no pressure to evolve rapidly. Everything is fine-tuned for a world that stays cold, predictable, and unchanging. And that stability is exactly what makes the Antarctic so fragile. When your entire evolutionary strategy depends on everything staying the same, even a small change can be catastrophic. And that's the problem these giants are facing right now. Polar gigantism only works in water that stays freezing, oxygen-rich, and stable. Take that away, and the system starts to fall apart. Warmer water holds less oxygen. As ocean temperatures rise, the oxygen levels that these giants depend on begin to drop. Suddenly, those massive bodies that were perfectly adapted become a liability. Metabolism speeds up in warmer water, meaning they need even more oxygen. But there's less available. The animals that once ruled the frozen deep start suffocating in their own size. This is already happening. Studies have shown that in areas where Antarctic waters are warming even slightly, the maximum sizes of sea spiders are shrinking. Populations that once grew to 2 feet across are now topping out at smaller sizes. And while colossal squids are harder to study because they live so deep, scientists worry that warming waters could eventually make them uncolossal, or worse, extinct. It's strange to think about. These creatures look like monsters, nightmares from the deep, but they're harmless to us. The total number of human deaths from colossal squids? 0. No one has ever been attacked by one. They're not threats. They're survivors, perfectly adapted to one of the harshest environments on Earth. And now, that environment is changing faster than they can adapt. These giants are evolutionary masterpieces, shaped by millions of years of cold, oxygen-rich stability. But that stability is breaking, and when it does, we'll lose some of the strangest, most incredible creatures on the planet. Polar gigantism is one of the most extreme examples of how environment shapes life. Freeze the ocean, and life doesn't just survive. It gets giant, but warm it even slightly, and those giants start to disappear. The coldest oceans on Earth created the largest invertebrates, the longest animals, and some of the most alien-looking creatures ever discovered. And all of it is more fragile than it looks.